Hey everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lamia and I'm really passionate about access to education and opportunities, and that's the premise of my channel really. So feel free to suss the vibe, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any videos. So let's just get straight into it. QS Universities, the website, this one here, has been my go-to for like the past 5 years plus. Anyway, according to QS Universities, London has been ranked as the best student city in the world for the past 4 years. As in since 2018, I go back to the website expecting to get a different result from like the year's roundup, and it's always London. So I did a bit of digging on their website, and I figured that in order to arrive at this conclusion, they consider a range of factors including affordability, desirability, employer activity, and the opinions of current students. And if you're anything like me, you're probably curious about the appeal of London. Like, is it really all that? And more importantly, is it really worth the hefty price tag? Well, you are in luck, because I actually happen to know someone who studied in London. It's me. I studied in London. So in this video, I will be talking about my own personal experience as somebody who studied in London. In the affirmative, representing the why you should study in London side, we have me, and also in the non-affirmative side, representing the why you should not study in London side, we also have me. So each side has 7 arguments, and the verdict on whether London is overrated or worth the price tag will be yours to make at the end of this video. So, little anecdote, I initially wanted to do my undergraduate in Canada, and I will not mention the name of the university, but I ended up getting into this school and I really didn't think I would get in. Anyway, long story short, I realized I couldn't go because it was just too expensive. And let me tell you guys, I wanted to do the degree and everything, but let me be honest, this university was located in Montreal, and in that year, which was 2017, QS Universities had literally ranked Montreal as the best student city of that year. So I was like, not only was I like sad about not being able to go, I was also like, this is an infringement on my student life, you know what I mean? And I remember the university's PR team like ran that statistic into the ground, as they should, honestly. It's a nice thing to brag about. And I mean, heaven knows all the London universities have been taking it to town for the past 4 years. Anyway, 19-year-old me had very little clue that I would end up doing my final year in London in the academic year 2019-2020. So yeah, the premise of this channel, trust the process and also trust the timing of your life, because it'll work out. Okay, firstly, London is a melting pot if I ever saw one. You really do meet the world in London. This isn't just something they say on university brochures, like you really do meet the world in London. Owing to post-World War II immigration to the UK, you can find people of different cultures in the UK. I'm talking, there's a significant Jamaican community, a significant Pakistani community, Indian community, Malaysian community. Like wherever you're from, I can guarantee that even if it's just a small community, there will be people from your neck of the woods in London. Bouncing off of this previous point, London has a variety of different foods and cuisines. Like, you are spoiled for choice with so many different cuisines on offer. It's easy to forget that Britain invaded half the world for spices and still refused to use them. You have Malaysian food, Singaporean food, Indian food, Chinese food, Turkish food, and I mean, you're literally in the best place to have a classic English breakfast and a good old high tea. From street food to Michelin star to food markets, like food is not something you need to worry about in London. I had a whale of a time because London is also the vegan capital of the world. And for the first time ever, I could leave my house without having eaten, because I knew that anywhere I went, I would be, met with not only one option, which is the case in, like in Zimbabwe, for example, where being plant-based is not all that common. And I knew that I'd just have multiple options at all times wherever I went. Like, there's like vegan options at Greg's even. It's easy to forget sometimes, but the primary reason for going to university in the first place is honestly to bag that degree. Furthering your education, in my opinion, is the best investment you can make. It is an investment in yourself, and look no further to do just that than London. London is home to so many of not just the UK, but the world's leading institutions. I'm talking the University College London, King's College London, the London School of Economics and Political Science, and of course Imperial College London, without forgetting the Royal Academy for Dramatic Arts and the Royal College of Music. London is so culturally rich. Like, I felt like I was in a utopia when I was in London. Like, I never thought I would ever live in a place where I would never exhaust all of the cultural activities to do. There's so many galleries, museums and concerts to attend in London. I mean, there's the West End, and also the West End. There's the British Museum if you're interested in seeing all of the stolen artifacts. The nightlife is super vibrant. There's Ministry of Sound. You're never concerned about whether or not Drake will be making a pit stop in London on his world tour, because it's obvious that he will be turning the O2 into the O3. Your only concern really is whether you want to go for the Friday show or the Saturday show. Of course, I'd be amiss if I didn't mention the shopping opportunities in London. They literally have every single mainstream shop that you can think of, from Acne Studios to Nike. The thrifting scene in London is also pretty notorious. Charity shops are on every high street you can think of. So when I moved to the UK from Italy, I will admit I was low-key concerned because I knew that the UK didn't have Sephora. And I was like, how am I gonna live without Sephora? Because at that time, like, a lot of the products I'd started using were actually part of the Sephora line. And honestly, you guys, not once, hand on heart, like not once did I ever think about Sephora while I was in the UK, because anything that I wanted, there were replacements for them, like Harvey Nichols, Boots, they have Fenty Beauty. I was pretty much good to go. As one of the main economic capitals of the world, London is home to a range of multinational companies and organizations, from Goldman Sachs to McKinsey & Company to Save the Children to the International Institute for Strategic Studies. There's just so many working opportunities in London, and you won't run out of options. When I went to study in the UK, the statistic was that London was 30% green, and honestly I thought it was just one of those fancy things they just slapped into a brochure to make it more appealing. But honestly, and I'm Zimbabwean and I'm somebody who is obsessed with nature, I won't go so far as to say that it's completely green, like everywhere, but there was always a park near enough to me wherever I was. Even if I was in like a zone 3, there was always a park nearby where, you know, you could go about your business, you could go on a little jog, you could read in the park, and it's really, really nice. Like, they take green spaces very seriously. To a certain extent, there's also a culture of biking in the UK. At least in zone 1 where I was living, there were like cycling tracks almost on all of the streets, and I was just like, this is just so cool. Bear in mind, I was coming from Venice where everything's on water, so like seeing roads was actually quite fascinating to me at this point. Studying requires your full attention, and every corner of London is trying to pull you in a different direction. And sometimes it's tricky because these distractions come in the form of something that appears to be educational, like a bookshop or a library turned museum. And then by the time you step out of the library, you realize that you actually haven't got any productive work done because you were so caught up in the exhibition detailing the life and times of Charles Dickens, semi-autobiographical. So I've mentioned on this channel, but I went to boarding schools that were in the countryside of Zimbabwe, and I was pretty much surrounded by mountains. It was in the middle of nowhere and just surrounded by these beautiful mountains. And honestly, when I reflect on the origins of my studiousness, honestly, I attribute most of it to my environment. I had zero distractions, so I pretty much had to study, because what else was I supposed to do? Like, it was either that or like go on a walk. Since the primary reason for going to university in the first place is to bag that degree, opt for a Leicester or a Coventry as opposed to London. So I remember this one time, my friends and I went to Tate Modern. If you know anything about the Tate, it's just really large. There's lots of art to get through, and contemporary art as it is just very difficult to interpret for lack of a better word. And I was exhausted when we got home, and I did my whole nighttime routine. I'm talking meditation, I'm talking chamomile tea, I'm talking, you know, showering and just like winding down. Joke's on me, because that was the day I realized that London is very hard to turn off. It's not just a matter of, oh, I stepped through the door and I'm home now, like that's it. I feel like London is, especially if you're particularly sensitive, the overstimulation in London is no joke. For many of us, going to university is your first time leaving your home country, or even your home as you know it. It goes without saying, London is a large city, and essentially you have to make peace with the fact that you will be a small fish in a big pond. Apart from being fast-paced, I find that London is incredibly individualistic. Then again, this could be purely subjective, but I remember this one time, my Zimbabwean turned full-time Londoner friend and I met up, and he was testing my London subway fare, if you will. And he was like, okay, POV, you're sitting on the tube and the lady next to you starts crying on your shoulder. What do you do? So naturally I responded, I reassure her and I hand her some tissues. And he was like, no, you failed the test. The correct answer is you continue looking forward and you mind your business and you act like you don't even notice. That's what a true Londoner would do. And honestly, even though his tone was brutal, I couldn't actually refute any of it. He was absolutely correct. My first ever panic attack happened on a tube, and I don't know if from the outside looking in you could tell that something was happening with me. I just remember people looking at me, but nobody actually came to help me or anything. Students are already under a lot of pressure. Some students have hectic student loans to pay off. Others are, you know, mindful of not having to ask their parents for even more money after paying like hectic tuition fees. The last thing you need is to find yourself in a city where a coffee alone could cost you a fiver. And don't get me started on rent, and don't get me started on how it really adds up when you constantly top up your Oyster card. London is such a big city, and honestly, if it takes you 30 minutes to go from point A to point B, then that's a good day. And of course, like the tube experience, honestly, not for the faint of heart. I hear that it gets quite unruly, and at rush hour you could be pushed, you could, you know, find yourself having delays, there's strikes all the time. Do you really want to be in a city where the transportation system is chock-a-block? When I was studying in London, two of my closest friends happened to also be exchange students. The difference being that they were only in London for one semester. So when they left after the first semester, I was pretty much left alone. Listen, you guys, of all the qualities that I have, the one that's never in question is friendliness. I mean, I'm so certain that I'm a friendly person that at one point my Instagram handle was l'amiable, which translated from French literally means like the friendly. Like, I got friendliness down. Except in London, I found it, for the first time in my life, I found it extremely difficult to make friends. And honestly, it's because everybody's on the go, everybody has a motive, there's so many places to see. Being that lonely made me think about how different it would have been if I had gone to my second choice of university, which was Warwick. In recent times, London has been the epicenter for terrorist attacks. In fact, when I was studying in London, there was an incident around London Bridge, and I remember getting several missed calls from my gran. And when I got back to her, she's the one who actually told me, she was, of course, like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "What happened?" So yes, London is one of those cities, like Paris a bit, where at all times you need to have your wits about you, be it making sure that you have secured your bicycle, because bicycles get stolen all the time, or be it, you know, making sure that you are watching out for pickpockets on the tube. Most notably, there was a time where my friend and I had gone to Brixton because we wanted to see South London. I kid you not, when I got home that evening, I had the BBC app on my phone at the time, and the headline that I received a few hours after I left South London that day, there had been a stabbing. I'm not trying to get you to, you know, buy into like sensationalized news and stuff, but I am saying that London, from my own personal experience, is one of those cities where you need to have your wits about you at all times. So that brings us to the end of all 7 sides of each argument. I'm really keen to hear what your verdict is. Do you think London is worth the hefty price tag, or do you just feel like it's just totally overrated? Please do leave it in the comments, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.